All right, everyone, welcome back into another fantasy golf video. Going to be getting into the Genesis Invitational, touching on the top picks and plays here for this tournament. Let's go in and get into it. So the nice thing about this tournament is that we know what to expect. We have seen this tournament a bunch at the same course. We know what to expect. Tiger's back. That's going to be fun as well. I think that hopefully they'll bring in a lot more casual people. Just Tiger being back, they're going to be excited to play. And the NFL is over as well, so people might just be jumping into fantasy golf a little bit more, which I hope. We've had a pretty big edge over the past year with, more and more kind of casual people coming in, and we can gain an edge. I was looking at some of the key stats that are being promoted on PGA Tour site, and even that through a different company, even that was a little bit wrong as well. So there are still big edges, and I would argue the edges that we are gaining in fantasy golf are bigger than ever. And so looking at kind of the event overview, we can see this is a track that is typically harder to score on. The winning score is really never above 20 under par. Now, there are a little bit better of golfers playing in this tournament, so the last 2 years it's been a little bit easier to score on, but at the same time, it's a par 71. Looking at the length of it, it's not that long as well for a par 71. And looking at the key stats, and this is going to be based off of the past tournaments, which players played well, which key stats were the most predictive in terms of golfers that played well. Par 4 scoring, yes, it's par 71. That does make sense, but we want to be looking at that. Bogey avoidance, this is a harder scoring track. You could look at birdie to bogey ratio as well, but golfers that tend to not make bogeys are the ones that are going to be playing well. Now, you always want to be scoring. We're looking at that in other aspects. Strokes gained tee to green is going to be in there. Strokes gained total is always in there. Those are always kind of core stats. These are more just specific tournaments. 200 plus is another one. And I don't want to pick on another company, but a company that's associated with the PGA Tour was referencing some kind of wrong key stats. I don't want to say wrong, just not as good key stats. They kind of mentioned par 3 scoring. A better metric of that would actually be looking at 200 plus. Okay. And you can see why. I mean, it probably goes hand in hand, right? The par 3s are a little bit longer at this track, but a lot of golfers are going to be set up with having 200 plus out or about that. It really depends on the pins and whatnot, but for the most part, 200 yard plus is going to be a very good stat to be looking at this week as well, which typically does not pop up. And so we can see those golfers that are going to be the top stat fits. And we are starting to get further and further into the season where the data that we are pulling from the PGA Tour is going to be more full. Now, someone like Rory, we have to default to some stats over the past year because, he just hasn't played enough tournaments on the PGA Tour thus far to get enough key stats to be looking at. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into course history. So which golfers had the best course history over the past 4 years at this tournament with at least 2 starts? And for those that are wondering, the reason why we look at 4 years is because that's when the data is going to be the most significant. You could look at the past 5 years, but really anything past that is statistically irrelevant. That's why I like to dial in the data. That's why I curate it for you, is so we can just stick to which data points matter. And so looking at the past 4 years, you can see Max Homa has been a course horse. He has dominated this track. He is a very interesting thought process this week just because of his terrible form that he's in. 2 really bad starts in a row. How is he going to respond this week? You got Victor Hovland, who is second best in course history rank. He's coming in off of an injury. What do we do with that? A lot of people are going to be looking at Cameron Young. Probably should have won at this track 2 years ago. Kind of was a letdown there, but still 2 good starts at this track. Will Zalatoris. You think about Will Zalatoris, this is kind of a major track, right? This course sets up very well for majors. He is typically someone that plays well at those majors, so it's no shock that he has good course history. Be interesting to see how he plays this week. You got Patrick Cantlay popping up in there. Scotty, 1 missed cut 4 years ago. I don't really care too much about that, given the fact that he's went 12th, 7th, 20th. The thing with it is there's a lot of great plays. There's a lot of great golfers that are playing in this field. And so it's going to be very difficult in terms of course history to really find biggest points differentiation. And so for me, I just want to see golfers that have good course history. If they don't, and Chris Kirk is someone that I like as a play, but he doesn't have any course history here over the past 4 years. So he might be someone I don't look at, even though he's a good stat fit. And I'll touch on that in a second. Let's jump into recent form. And so I came out with this video a little bit later because I was working on making the data pretty much easier for the public to come in and see it. So recent form average, that's going to be the last 7 starts. That might seem like a weird number to be using, guys, but the past 7 starts is when the data is the most significant in terms of predictability for a future tournament. Okay. You look further than that, it starts to dip off, and really after 8 starts, to 20 starts. It's basically all the same. Now you could look at the past 4 events, 3 events and whatnot, but that could lead you to be on a play like Kevin Yu, let's say, for example, last week, who had shown upside over his past 4 starts, but also there was risk reward in there. And that's where we need to throw in 7 starts. That's when the data is the most predictive. So looking at it, here are the golfers that have the best recent form rank over the past 7 starts: Scotty Scheffler, Rory, Ludwig, Aubert, Beau Hasler popping up in there. Not really shocking. You got Xander, who, like Victor Hovland, withdrew from last week's event due to an injury, a wrist injury for Xander. So we got to see with him. That's another interesting thought process. Hovland and also Xander would be 2 players we'd be really dialing in on if it weren't for those injuries. Tommy Fleetwood's been playing extremely well, been making a bunch of cuts as well. Victor Hovland. I mean, guys, this field is pretty loaded. Okay, it's just an extremely fascinating week in terms of the top plays. And so with that, let's go ahead and get into the top plays. So guys, for me this week is kind of more simple, I believe. The biggest question marks we have is really what to do with Xander, Hovland, and Homa. Xander would be a great play, okay? And one of the things that I did with the data as well yesterday, instead of coming out with the video, I went ahead and really dialed in the 9 to 5 data take, which is essentially the 9 to 5 AI. This is a formula-based thing that is preset based off of the past years in terms of which players are most likely to make the cut and also give you a top finish. So the core plays this week, and I wanted to dial it in a little bit more, we only have 2. That's going to be Scotty and Xander. So Xander, typically speaking, would be a core play, right? He's been having elite finishes in terms of his form, and he does have a great track record here. Great stat fit. The one concern with him, and this is something that the data can't pull in, right? The AI can't pull in, is this finish that he had in the previous event, simply because, well, he might have been injured in that event. And so he withdrew last week because of that injury. Now, is he a great play? He is. If we weren't worried about that injury, that's the biggest concern. And so we can see the 2 players we want to go out of our way to target are going to be Scotty and Xander. Clear cut, best plays, Xander and Scotty. Scotty's easy. I mean, and so yeah, Scotty does feel like really the class of the field here. If you guys can afford to pay up for him, which I think you will be able to, you want to do that. He should really be above 12K. Even last week, like it seemed like he could win. Even 3 events ago where he finished 17th, like that didn't hurt you, but that's where it started to not help you at the same time. He's just been so consistent though. And given how well he's played at this tournament, given his stat fit, I mean, across the board, he's just an elite option. So yeah, I do think he's someone we want to be targeting as a core play. I think the data is going to be correct there. And if you guys are wondering, my whole approach when it comes to DFS is just making it more simple on you guys. And so like with the write-up, I'm just highlighting what the data is saying and then putting my thoughts on it, which is going to be somewhat of the same thing in this video. And so I do want to talk about the 2 plays that to me stand out. That's going to be Wyndham Clark here, and then also Adam Scott. So Wyndham Clark, 2 events ago at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, he was one of the players that was one of the best leverage plays that you could make. He was the exact same thing last week as well in terms of like outright betting at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am. He was the best like EV bet you could make. Obviously kind of got a little bit lucky, and I would say that because, well, last Sunday he was kind of in contention and then had a terrible round, so like tough to say. Would he have won? It's tough to say for sure, but he has been someone that for some reason, even though he's been, standing out on paper as a great play, the public just hasn't been able to get to. And did they get a little bit lucky maybe last week with the 75th place finish? Sure, I would say so, given how well he was playing. At the same time, last week was just a weird week. Like if a golfer played well, great. If they didn't, kind of well. All the like GPP only type plays, all the risk reward plays that you would have bet on last week seemed to do well, including Nick Taylor, who ended up winning. All the save plays kind of did what Wyndham Clark did, or JT Poston, who missed the cut on the number. It's just tough to say like why. Weather, drunk people, starts and stops. It was a weird week last week. This week, hopefully going to be a little bit more predictable. Hopefully the weather cooperates with us, that we don't have to worry about all those random nuances. But still, at his price tag, Wyndham Clark is looking like a phenomenal play, a player that we should be going out of our way to target. One of my biggest mistakes last week is that the data was telling us Adam Scott is an elite play Adam Scott. And I was like, I don't know about that. I don't know if I want to. I want to target these other golfers that have had multiple starts thus far this season. And he is someone that last year at this tournament, terrible finish, guys. Like it just was. We do not want that bad of a finish from Adam Scott again. Like 65th in a no cut event, or it's a cut event, but in a limited field event, that's terrible. But prior to that, 4th, 38th, 1st, 2nd, good stuff there. Other than that, we can see stat fit wise thus far this season, look at the stats that we have, top 4 in the field. Okay. Specialist wise, which just takes all the unique characteristics for that week's tournament and puts it into one data point, 6th in the field there. So that kind of, correlates together. Good stat fit, good specialist, that, that blends together. Recent form wise, been playing much better recently. Over his past 5 starts, we can see multiple top 10 finishes in there. Go back a little bit further, not as good, but he has been playing well recently. Now I'm comfortable playing him, and of course, it's going to be the time he lets me down. But no, on paper, he's looking like a standout play to me. And so, in terms of lineup process, what I think I'm going to be doing thus far is probably going Clark, Scott, and Scotty. Just those two, Clark and Scott, just given where they're priced, they seem to be the best bang for your buck thus far this week. And then Scotty Scheffler. So with that, we're going to have to find other plays to get on. I think Sam Burns is a little bit too cheap for how well he's been playing for what it's worth. Hogard is someone I'd be fine with. Will Zalatoris feels like a risk reward play. Keegan Bradley's been playing some great golf. JT Poston, up until that miscut, have been playing great golf. Denny McCarthy, always going to be a good GPP play. But where I start to want to play some golfers here is going to be looking at these golfers that are popping up more as mid-exposure plays. And so basically players that you don't want to go crazy with, but players that are good enough. And so Beau Hossler is going to be the first player that pops up in that regard. And sure, he didn't play well at this tournament last year, 48th the year before that. We do not love that. Okay, you could maybe look at Sleet Tagala, who's much more high priced. He's a good GPP play as well. But looking at Beau Hossler, price considered, he is someone I do like. He has been playing great. 4th best recent form in the field, again, over the past 7 starts, but has made 10 straight cuts in a row, has had multiple upside finishes as well. And really the only bad data point that he has in here is that start last year. And for what it's worth, Beau Hossler is a much more improved golfer thus far this season. So he's someone I'd be fine going out of my way to target considering the limited field event. We're going to have to get a little bit risk reward given the limited field event that we have, but because of that, there's going to be softer pricing. And so with that, we're going to start to get away from the safe plays and get into more of the risk reward based plays. And I think that's where we're going to find our best value that we have. So we got Eric Cole that's popping up in there. He's been playing well. Hogard is someone that I already mentioned. I think he's a good play. You got Russell Henley, always a good GPP play. Chris Kirk is the play I want to mention, though. So he won 4 events ago. Great stat fit. Does not have a start at this tournament over the past 4 years. So that's kind of concerning. And I do think we want to be prioritizing golfers that have course history. But Harris English is going to be another one of those golfers I want to mention. So a 12th place finish last year. And this time last year, Harris English was not playing that well. You can see based off his recent form, he still isn't exactly playing all that well. Key stat wise, not great there just yet. But we know the kind of golfer Harris English is. And if you look at the golfers that are priced below him, he is kind of the standout play in terms of the last player on a tier that you can play that still will provide upside. I like the fact that, over his past few starts, over his past 7, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 out of his past 7 starts have been top 20 finishes. If he gives us that at this price tag, that's going to be enough. And given the fact that he has a 12th place finish at this track, I do like that as well. I think he's going to be able to outproduce his price tag, and I do think he's going to give us a good chance at a made cut. So he is someone that I'd be happy to end up on. And then from there, guys, we're seeing that none of the sub 7K plays, the value plays as I like to call them, are popping up. So who are some of the players that I could end up on here? Because I think we might have to. And obviously some of these golfers are going to make the cut. So some of those golfers to me would be, well, we got a ton. I mean, you could make a strong argument for really any of these golfers down here. Andrew Putnam is a golfer that missed a cut in the number. He's been someone that we've been playing a lot. You can see even when he's played bad, he didn't play terribly. I mean, 1 bad round at the Shriners. Okay, that's really it. This one bad opening round, fired off a 68, missed a cut in the number. Kind of okay with that. You go a little bit lower, some people are going to be tempted to play Tiger Woods. I don't know if I exactly want to get there. I'm a little bit worried about him. Can he get 4 rounds in? That's the biggest question mark. But really looking at Taylor Moore, who's been really a solid value. I think he gives us a made cut at his price tag. And the cut this week, just for anyone wondering, is going to be the top 50 in ties. So again, limited field event, that's really not too much. But continuing on, Ben Griffin's been someone that's been playing really strong golf thus far this season. 1 miscut, that was an under par miscut. Again, as long as you're shooting under par, I'm kind of okay with a miscut like that. Nick Hardy to me is really a standout play as price tag. Such a disappointing finish between Wyndham Clark and Nick Hardy last week, and Justin Thomas for that matter, having bad Sundays. That really ruined any chance I had of having a good week. It was so painful. I'm like, yes, Nick Hardy, the value play that, I told people to go out of the way to play. I'm like, this is great. 78 on Sunday. That was so painful. But I still think, maybe that was a good thing. Maybe that's going to help us out this week. He still made the cut, did what we wanted him to do last week. Can he do that again this week at this price tag? I certainly think it's worth looking at. You can see the form's been pretty solid, good enough, right? We'll certainly take that. Now on paper, when we start to look at some of these values, none of them are really standing out. Adam Svensson's okay. Taylor Montgomery's fine. Tom Hoagie, be fine ending up on him as well. Tiger not ranked last in the field, which is good, but 51st. And then Nick Hardy. Nick Hardy is not popping up that well, just as an FYI, 63rd. But again, 11 straight made cuts at this price tag to get someone like that. I'd be kind of okay with that, especially if you are trying to fit Scotty Scheffler into your builds. And then real quick, looking at the 9-to-5 betting sheet, I just want to pull up which golfers currently have the best TV, and Scotty Scheffler and Rory popping up as, the top golfers are popping up as the most likely. That makes sense. There's a big drop off in terms of like quality of play that, Scotty, I think definitely has a great chance to win. Victor Hovland and Xander, if you didn't want to bet them, I get it. Their concern would be the injuries, but really to me, the two that we want to be betting on are going to be Adam Scott. You can get him at 33-1 on BetMGM. Wyndham Clark, 40-1 on some sites. BetMGM, FanDuel, that's pretty darn good. In terms of like EV, Chris Kirk, 100-1 on FanDuel. Again, I don't think we need to roll with that, but maybe the weird trend continues. Now, you can say the last 2 weeks, Wyndham Clark definitely, I think people should have been ending up on at least somewhat. Great play, definitely stood out like a sore thumb in terms of DFS purposes. And if you guys wanted to just take a stab on someone that was a good long shot bet as well, people probably hit that because of that. Nick Taylor, a little bit as well. Like Nick Taylor wasn't a terrible play last week. I could see how some people would have ended up on him, but the other golfers thus far this season, completely random. Now that is not going to continue. And so for me, looking at it, like Chris Kirk would not really be too random. At the same time, do I want to get there? No. Benny Ann, could he finally figure it out? Sure. But I do think we want to be concentrating on these top end guys. So for me, maybe a sprinkle of Chris Kirk, but probably not. But Adam Scott, Wyndham Clark, maybe just Scotty as well. You could go a little bit of Colin Morikawa, but to me, I think it's very tight in terms of who we want to be ending up on outright wise. And I do want to touch on ownership leverage. I am doing this video on Tuesday, so we are getting some ownerships. Do want to call it that it's not going to be the highest just yet. Sorry, the most correct just yet. We're going to get more and more ownership projections in there, a fuller amount. But I do want to call it like the golfers last week, and I got this wrong because I thought the golfers that were coming in as projected to be overowned were going to be golfers that were fine plays. But no, basically all the golfers that were coming in overowned last week missed the cut. And on the flip side of that, you could argue that the golfers that were underowned actually did play pretty darn well. Wyndham Clark, again, besides that last round, did really well. Still scored enough. But then after that, the one bad play was Andrew Putnam, who missed the cut on the number, but it was only projected to be 2% owned. The rest of the golfers did pretty darn well. Okay, so definitely a very good tool last week. And so again, these are just preliminary projected ownerships. This is like a rough guess. Once we start getting people building a lot more lineups and whatnot, there's going to be a more true ownership leverage indication. That's why I typically like to come out with the 9-to-5 write-up later on in the afternoon on Tuesday, so I can give you guys just a one-click, boom, here's everything, including the ownership leverage. But again, this is going to change, but we can take a decent note, a decent look at it. And so right now, as it sits, all the players are going to be projected to be overowned, are going to be those lower price plays. And that somewhat makes sense. They're just not the best plays in the field. It's a limited field event. That's going to occur. And then, right now it does make sense why, looking at in terms of most underowned golfers, why Xander and Hovland would be coming in as some of the most underowned golfers, as well as Rory. Like, it makes sense why people would be hesitant to go out of their way to roster those guys. Rory, we haven't seen that much of him thus far this season. Looking at Xander Hovland, dealing with those injuries that, I shouldn't say injuries, but they, wear and tear. Let's put it that way. And it's early on in the season, so do have to worry about that. And then, we got Clark, Fleetwood, Scott popping up in there. I definitely agree with that. And then you could argue Scotty, and I'm interested to see where his ownership does come out to be. He probably should be much higher owned than that. And if you guys didn't want to use just the 9-to-5 leverage rank, you could also use the Vegas leverage rank, which tells us golfers likely to make the cut, golfers outright bets as well, and compares it against that instead of the 9-to-5 model. Still, Xander would be number 1. You know, there's some slight differences in that as well. Like Patrick Cantlay would be number 2. Adam Scott, though, is kind of the clear-cut play that I think people are not ending up on for some reason. This kind of feels like Wyndham Clark a lot at the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am, so he's going to be someone I think we should get to as well. But that is going to be all for today's video. Thank you guys for watching. Well, wait. Let's get into it real quick. I nearly jumped the gun there. I didn't give you guys my first look build. You know, that's my bad. But yeah, I do think these are the first plays that we want to end up on. And then from there, I'm kind of fine going with Beau Hossler, Harris English. You know, they've been playing well, a little bit risk reward there. And then this is going to be the difficult part. This is a lot like last week, where last week I just hated the way I was closing on my builds, and it kind of feels the same way, a little bit risk reward, kind of I don't want to say dead range. Like, I'm fine ending up on Willie Z there. Poston's fine, Keegan's fine, Hogard's fine. Like, I'm fine with all those plays. Benny Ann is a decent play as well. I don't think we need to be stressing salary too much, but if you guys want to do something like this, like go with Hardy instead, just hoping for like a made cut out of him, you can do that, and then you're gonna have much more salary left over. And so Sam Burns, Cameron Young, those players are gonna be much more in play then. So, you know, for example purposes, I'm fine going Sam Burns, you know, in this lineup. You have $200 left over. If you want to fit someone else in there instead of Harris English, you could, but I don't think we need to do that. So this is going to be the first look build for you guys. Now it's going to be all for today's video. Thank you guys for watching. Let's have a good slate. And as always, guys, let's keep cashing. Make sure to give a like and subscribe to the channel if you guys want tools or access to any of the tools that you saw in this video. They are available at 9to5sports.com for just $10 a month. Let's have a good slate. And as always, let's keep cashing.